So, Kabbalah and meditation. Josh is doing some Kabbalistic hand motions. So, when you think about meditation in Judaism, when you think about meditation, what do you think about?
Buddhism.
Sorry?
Buddhism.
Buddhism, right?
Ah.
Buddhism, Hinduism, Eastern religions. When you think about Jewish meditation, what do you think about? Really? Does that exist? So the interesting thing is it does exist. In fact, there's a very long history of Jewish meditation. And some people believe that these traditions have been lost. I mean, just to start, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, who we're going to talk about a lot, this is Jewish meditation. He has another book called Meditation in the Bible. And what he tries to show is that if you look carefully at the words of the Bible, their descriptions of people meditating. The Hebrew word for meditation is hisbodedut. Badad is to be alone. Hitboded is self-isolation. And he shows how this word, the roots of different words that really mean meditation appear, and mostly around the prophets. Now remember that in ancient Israel, the experience, the main God experience wasn't like today. It wasn't very intellectually oriented, study, Talmud, wisdom. It was an experiential experience, so to speak. So the prophets who received divine messages and communed with the Almighty, basically what it shows is that they had schools of prophets that prepared them for prophecy, and basically the main way was through meditation, was through techniques of, well, we're going to have to talk about what meditation is, but it was meditative techniques that brought them to this higher states of awareness and eventually to God messages. And in the Kabbalah, the Talmud, that we mentioned this before, the Talmud tells us not to be involved with Kabbalah, and talks about 4 rabbis who entered the orchard, which is really for kind of an acronym for entering some area of practice that is not for the general public. It says Kabbalah shouldn't be taught in public and to a general audience. And it describes some meditative techniques they were doing over water, saying certain words, doing certain things, and that brought them to a state. And we mentioned a few weeks ago, one of them died, one of them went crazy, one of them became a heretic, and only Rabbi Akiva came out unscathed. So that also might be a reason that meditation is kind of not heard of in Judaism, because it was reserved for people who generally were on a more mystical path, at least certain techniques. And Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan has 3 books on meditation. Meditation in the Bible, which shows how the prophets were involved in schools of meditation over many years. And then he has Meditation in Kabbalah, which you do not necessarily want to read because you won't understand a thing. And I've studied Kabbalah for a number of years, and I still don't understand much in that book. So those are the advanced Kabbalistic techniques and these traditions that existed that we're not going to really get into, although we'll mention it. But this book, Jewish Meditation, is really about an introduction to Jewish meditation. And let's put aside now the more technical, kind of like Kabbalistic meditations, which take years of self-development and internal concentration as a prerequisite to even start getting into these things. Okay? And let's talk about meditation in general. Now, when you think of meditation, we don't necessarily think about prayer, but what I throw out to you is how is meditation different than prayer? And if so, in what ways? And maybe that can get us to try and figure out what is meditation. Okay. So, is meditation different than prayer?
Yes.
Let me turn it around. What do they have in common?
And meditation's like an inner thing, and prayer is supposed to be more outward, or at least like talking to God, not yourself.
Okay, so prayer is inward, right. So prayer, the first step in prayer is what Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan calls hitbodedut, self-isolation. In other words, turning inward. inner concentration, right? And what about prayer?
Meeting with at least 10 people.
Okay, it's generally done in community when it's a minyan, although does it have to be? Not necessarily. And the part of prayer which is perhaps the most kind of the pinnacle of prayer is the Amidah, the silent prayer, when we're not necessarily kind of doing it, at least in unison with others, we're doing it at the same time, but we're really kind of turned inward. So the first step of prayer or meditation is to kind of pull away from external stimuli, pull away from other things which might take us away from what we're going to try to be concentrating on, to try to have inner focus, to bring us to a place of inner concentration. Yes? That's the first step, right? And the next step is what we call kavanah. And the term kivun is a direction. Kavanah means directing our thoughts towards certain things, which is required in prayer. Is it required in meditation? Has anyone here meditated?
I have.
I have.
Very unsuccessful.
Very successfully. What type of meditation did you try and do?
The one at
If you want to share.
the Shambhala Center, it's on 27th Street.
Okay.
A friend of mine is really crazy into it.
Shambhala Center. And what was involved? What did they do? You walked in, you sat down, what did they do?
That was pretty much it.
So it's just sitting there.
Yes.
And did they tell you anything before about how to sit?
They
Or what
just
to
said-
do while you're sitting?
They just said, focus on your breath.
Okay. Focus on your breath and sit.
That was,
Okay,
that's
very
about
good.
it.
Now I understand
I
why.
have about as much patience for that as you might.
I understand. That's very good. So while Eastern meditation is often what we call passive meditation, which means you are just trying to sit, empty your mind of thoughts, and just be, right? So Jews generally are not very successful at this. Although in the 60s and the 70s, late 60s, mid-70s through the early 80s, some of the heads of the main Buddhist teachings in America were Jews. Ram Dass was, Abraham Leibowitz, I don't know his name, which it was, but a lot of these guys were Jewish. But generally, so there's passive meditation and there's what I would call active meditation. An active meditation, as we're going to see later, because at the end we'll do a meditation, is kavanah kivun means directing. It's directing our thoughts, and particularly directing them towards certain thoughts internally. And it can be towards certain images, thoughts, feelings, ideas, but it's directed meditation that goes in a certain direction. And in that way, it is like prayer as well, because when we pray, we are, often with the use of a prayer book, but not necessarily, we are turning our thoughts in, we're kind of isolating ourselves from the mundane, turning inside, and then directing our thoughts towards certain specific ideas. Now, the one step that prayer has that meditation doesn't have is that prayer, then we attempt to communicate with the Almighty. So that's the extra step that prayer has that meditation doesn't have. But they have a lot in common, as you can see. A lot more in common to each other than they would, either one would have towards playing baseball. Right? Agreed? Okay. So, so good that we're agreed on that. Now, it's very interesting because in the Talmud, there seems to be a very clear indication of meditative practices. It says the elders, the sages of old, used to sit an hour before prayer, pray for an hour, and then sit for an hour after prayer. So what were they doing during that hour?
Eating?
Sorry?
Eating?
Eating?
Like we do?
No, they were preparing. So they were meditating. That's what it was, in effect. They were meditating. They were trying to settle their mind, trying to gather their thoughts and their feelings, trying to gain focus and inner focus. They were meditating, presumably. And it's also interesting that each of the prayers, the morning prayer and the afternoon prayer, starts with Psalms. The morning prayer has a whole Psuke de Zimra, Psalms of Praise. There's a whole section that takes about, depends how fast you want to read, but anywhere from 4 to 8 minutes to read the selection of Psalms. The afternoon prayer has just one Psalm, but each of them, the idea is that you're kind of like, it's like a warm-up, a prelude to then standing and talking to God. So the Talmud says that they used to sit for an hour before and after prayer. And seemingly what they were doing was meditating, was gathering their thoughts and their ideas in mind. Now, the goal of prayer, of meditation, can be two-part. Meditation can be for oneself. It can be to get knowledge of oneself, right? To sell oneself and feel, where are my thoughts? Where are my emotions? Where am I at myself? And then another step, though, can be to gain a state of higher awareness. Well, that might be what you were promised, right? Meditate.
They didn't promise it.
Right.
I'll give them that.
Or what the attraction was. Thinking, well,
Yes.
well, I'm asking another personal question. So what drew you to want to do it?
My friend, a very close friend of mine,
Oh, thank you.
he's all about it.
Oh.
He said, better, patience, whatever.
So you see what I'm getting at. He could have said, well, come and you'll learn to find peace of mind, you'll feel much more settled and calm.
That kind of stuff.
Or he could have said, come and you will achieve higher states of awareness. In other words, you'll achieve some kind of, whether you want to use the G word or not the G word, but, meditation can be a path towards having a state of being which takes us out of the mundane and connects us with something different, right? Some people it might just be, a more elevated state, a more euphoric state. Some people it might be a calmer state. And I'm making the distinction here that it's not just about, well, let me find peace of mind. It's let me find peace of mind. In the process, something else is going to happen as well. Something which goes beyond just me. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, has anyone had such experiences? What experiences do we have that might be in that category? I mean, for me, it's when I'm in nature. In nature, I'm sitting and looking, watching the sunset. And it's more than just, wow, this is so nice. I'm having this experience of seeing something so beautiful. It's not like, oh, let me go to the museum and see beautiful things. Let me sit out and watch the sunset and see something beautiful. I feel when I sit at sunset, or that something happens, that there's something more happening, being connected to something greater than myself. It's making me feel a certain euphoria, which makes me feel like there's something more than just this physical world or beauty that I want to experience, because it makes me feel good. See what I'm getting at? Right? So are there anyone else have such experiences at any time? Where we feel something connecting us to something more than ourselves?
This is it. So I was in choir at a conservative school, and I feel like we would practice, and at the end, like it was like actually high holiday, and then like we were singing and stuff, but I feel like I don't know, all the words take on like much more meaning, like seeing all of these other people.
So being in choir, singing with them, the high holidays, you get to that point, and what was the meaning that was greater? Was it a feeling or was it a thought?
I feel like it was definitely more of a feeling, because actually I don't really understand Hebrew that well. So, but it was just like a sense of community, and it was like I feel like was it like my parents were there, everybody's parents were there. It was like we were all practicing for this one great moment, and then it wasn't. I mean, we're not even that great of a choir, but it was like everybody.
So
was
can you
like
capture
on the
that
same
feeling
page.
of what it was?
I
Everyone
feel
being
like-
on the same page?
Yeah, and I feel like even if you didn't want to be there, like you kind of connected with something that was like with you. I feel like everybody was like trying or like practicing, or like you didn't, even if you didn't practice, like you planned ahead, you like bought tickets or like you know, you iron your clothes. That's not exactly meditation, but like, I don't know, you're like all getting ready for this one thing so you can, I don't know, like be in a higher place.
So, right, so that higher place of being inspired, and music can definitely open up the heart and give us a feeling of joy and euphoria, right? There's also, and this is something we'll talk about, of when you're one that is part of a whole, you feel something greater than yourself, right? There are those who would suggest that that is actually part of the feeling of feeling part of God, is you're one, but you're feeling part of a whole. So Rabbi David Aaron writes books on Kabbalah, saying he suggests that, you know, why do people get so into sports? But and like, what's your team, right? You gotta have a team, and then you go to root, right? Like, so some people know, like, you know, you would go like Penn State, go to a certain bar, right? That's where the Penn State people are, right? And you go and you root for your alma mater, and people get so, what's going on? Or when you go to the stadium, right? You're like going wild. What is it? So he wants to suggest that it's more than just kind of like, let's get rowdy. There's something about being one that then becomes part of a whole, where your oneness almost gets swallowed up by the whole, and there's something transcendent about that. You become part of something greater. Right? So, and he wants to suggest that that is an aspect of a God moment. I mean, I'm not saying sports is God, but they're tapping into the same thing, except in a different context than the divine one. But the idea is that that higher awareness, and whether it's for me, you know, watching the sunset or the beauty of nature, or whether it's moments in prayer when, you know, you feel kind of like part of the whole, singing and you're all kind of in together, or whether it's sitting alone and feeling part of the Almighty, that is a higher awareness that can open up within us in different contexts. And you could argue that that's almost a meditative state, right? Now, Rabbi Ari Kaplan wants to suggest that there are different types of meditative states. There's a type of higher awareness, which is, there's a waking state, which he calls a hot mode, which is when you're hyper aware and awake. And then he wants to suggest there's a more cool mode when you're almost in a semi-sleeping state, when you're semi out of full consciousness. Okay? And sometimes meditation can bring us to that place. When is another time when we're sometimes in that state when we feel we tap into things that are maybe, you know, beyond us?
Sleeping.
Right, sleeping, or that moment when you're going into or coming out of sleep. Have you ever been in that moment when you're kind of like coming out of sleep? And sometimes it might be associated with a dream, which is positive. Sometimes it's a disturbing dream. But it's very clear that our mind is kind of like tapping into things that are beyond, but that are inside us, but yet that are beyond us, right? So that semi-sleep state might be a time as well. Hot mode, waking state, sometimes when we come up and we get an idea, you know, you're working on something, and it just kind of like comes together and you get that aha moment, right? I know that, you know, sometimes my best ideas come in the shower. It's like when you're not thinking about it. Although that is not a hot mode, that's more cool mode. That's another cool mode where you're relaxing in the shower, you're not trying to think, and it just kind of like comes. Where did that come from? So there are these states where we are kind of in a different, altered inner state, and yet sometimes it can be very awake, or sometimes it can be semi-asleep. Okay. So. What I'd like to do, let's do. do meditation, and we can talk about other contexts in our Jewish lives of meditation. Sometimes comes up. And if you have had that experience of kind of like that meditation that never didn't work, I think this will be different. Okay. So, actually, you know what, Josh? Can you turn these lights off? The other ones. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Try to find a comfortable position. Shoulders back. Flat. Take a breath and try and center yourself. Put your hands on your thighs. I do suggest that you close your eyes. And Maimonides says that we get into meditative state by being relaxed. Physical body is relaxed, and it's very difficult for the mind to be relaxed. So we're going to relax our bodies first. And, put on the light. So, I did this with a partner for a while, and even though Jewish meditation is a fascinating book about Jewish meditation, I recommend this book. Everyday Kabbalah. It's not really Kabbalah. It's what we just did. It's guided meditations, which are not really Kabbalistic meditations. Are they Jewish meditations? The meditation we just did a Jewish meditation. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know, I think we did it with
Well, I'm going to try to hook into Jewish themes, Jewish awareness and outlook towards the Almighty, God's love for us, feeling our inner soul. These aren't necessarily uniquely Jewish, but I think there might be aspects of other traditions or meditations which are specifically not Jewish. In other words, the Jewish ones aren't exclusively Jewish, although if you meditate on certain exclusive Jewish things like the Shabbat, then that would make it so. But it's a Jewish outlook on our relationship to God. So she actually has a series of different meditations here. A light meditation like we just did, water meditation, Shema meditation. So you can read it and then lead yourself through it. There is some stuff out there where there are audios. I don't really know which the good ones are. I'm trying to find out for you. Yeah, a lot of it you'll find like the Jewish film movement. Most of that stuff does not. There's also, okay, so in terms of different types of Jewish meditation, so we just did kind of an active, guided imagery meditation. But there are other types of meditation that we do. There is a mantra meditation, Jewish mantra meditation. What's the most original ancient Jewish mantra meditation? Give me a hint. Shema, right? Meditating on God's unity. But what Rabbi Ari Kaplan suggests is that, and there are ethical teachers who do this, take one line in the Shema, or it can be something much more simple like, God loves me, or I am a good person, or I want to be a good person, and you can repeat that. Now they used to take terms like Ribbono Shel Olam, Master of the Universe, and say it over and over. There is a musician, singer, David Zeller, and he has a tape. It's actually pretty wild. It sounds like a woman. Very high voice, very soothing, meditative voice. And I can tell you which one to get. That's me. And he has some like his mantra meditations, but he'll just go over and over. And for a number of years, I did this with once a week with a partner, and we did different types of meditations. But we'll try and see if there's any guidance stuff out there. So there's Jewish mantra meditations. Sometimes they would meditate on something that is in the fathers or a verse in the Torah, like love your neighbor as yourself. Repeating themselves dozens, hundreds of times, several dozens of times a day, so that the message will seep into your heart. I've never really done that type of meditation, but there are people who've done it to get, and how do we get things from our head to our heart? Sometimes. So there's Jewish mantra meditation. There's also the Amida has meditation. Eric has an article about this. How if you, so a lot of times you'll see people in the Amida, the standing prayer, they're moving around a lot. So he says, so sometimes the movement can help you get into it. It's almost kind of a fetal sway, right? You know, there's people get into trauma. Sometimes they, right? You've seen that in movies, right? They kind of go into it. So, but sometimes it actually interferes with being really kind of centered. So he suggests try staying in the Amidah completely still. Each word, Ata, Hashem, right? Blessed are you, God, the God of our forefathers. God of Abraham. Each word you really feeling the word. Also by going at a slow pace like that, you're centering yourself and settling yourself more and more. And then he suggests using the bowing that we do as a type of meditative practice as well. So if you just kind of go forward, shakol, bow, back up. You kind of like lead yourself through it, but he said go slow and slow down the pace. When you bow like this. It can be meditative practice. It's a practice that settles us and focuses us upon each movement and each word that we're saying.
I was doing that at service when I go through so fast, right?
Yeah.
I think
So-
at service and everyone like, I was like, I'm halfway done when they say, continue on
It's
your
true.
own pace. And then
So
they go
don't,
on.
I once asked the rabbi when I was first starting to pray more and pray the whole service, I said, you know, I'm trying to still pray there, done. So
Yeah.
what should I do? He said, that is good. He said, just stay in your own prayer. Let them go on wherever they're going. You're in the right place. And sometimes you can just say, okay, let me just do 2 paragraphs. And they can do all 18, and that's okay too. So, and if you really connect to it, you always quote this, it's not how much or how little, but that our hearts turn. So, so that's another type of Jewish meditation, is the Amidah as meditation. There's also, there's a whole book by Buxbaum called Jewish Spiritual Practices. Basically what he does, you know, if you see Buddhists doing a tea ceremony, right? Some cool meditation. Have you ever seen a tea ceremony? Maybe what Japanese? It's Japanese. Japanese. The Hindu. And it's like a whole meditative, each action is focused upon, purposeful. So in his book, he turns every mitzvah that we do into a type of meditative practice. So, and in the prayer book, actually, 4 different mitzvot, there are sometimes paragraphs where there's a meditation before you do the mitzvah. So there's one for lighting candles, Shabbat candles. There's one before putting on the tefillin. There's one before hearing the shofar, or taking the lulav netrog on Sukkot. So there's this idea of turning each Jewish practice into a meditative experience, which means really kind of settling with it, thinking about it, and viewing meaning into it, and really stopping, you know, what we call today in modern society mindfulness, right? Saying blessings can be before food can be a type of meditative where, once again, the common theme is turning inside and being in our inner reality. Sometimes, and if it's kind of like what we call the hot mode, it can be an inner reality, but we're still completely awake, completely in the outer world as well. So that's another type of meditation, over mitzvot, over actions. So there's mitzvah as, so there's Jewish mantra meditation, there's the Amigaz meditation, there's mitzvot as meditation. And now here, I don't know if it's a meditation or a prayer. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, a Hasidic rabbi, used to prescribe to people to do what he called hitbodedut. Just go sit alone, which is sometimes already difficult to do. Well, again, not to empty our mind, but to direct our mind towards, maybe it's something in our life we're thinking about. Maybe it's things in life, something's bothering us, and I don't know what it is, and I need to figure it out what it is, right? Sometimes we're just kind of like off. And then the next step is to, in that hitbodedut, use that time alone to talk to the Almighty. So in his practice, you sit there, go in a room, sit in a chair, close the door, just talk about it. Is that a prayer? Is that a meditative practice? I don't know. It's hard to do. What Rabbi Ari Kaplan talks about with all of these techniques is that the more you do them, the more they become hard, the easier they are to do, the easier it is to just kind of move into that mode. So the relaxation, I've done it so many times, I can just kind of like, once I start, I just like flip right into it. Because you kind of have that muscle still there. It's kind of like, even though I haven't done it for a while, if you ever used to ride a bike or ice skate or ski, and you haven't done it for a long time, you're wondering, well, will I be able to do this again? What happens when you get back on the bike? It's almost like it never went off, right? It's still there, the muscle's there. So even if you don't do it every day, but if we develop the muscles for these, then we can flip into that mode when we do it.
It's like second nature almost.
Sorry?
It's like second nature.
Second nature, right. If you've ever done dance, or certain sports, right, where you can keep the action a lot, and then it just becomes part of it. So it takes time. It doesn't come right away. The first few times might feel a little awkward. Maybe it is easier to do it when someone's doing it, leading us through it, do it ourselves, although I've done a lot of times. So when I lead others, I'm able to get into that place as well. I felt at certain times losing it. And it wasn't that I was falling asleep, I was just going into another. Sometimes, that linear, okay, where am I going next? I have to kind of bring myself back. So, okay, next step. Any questions?
Do you email all that, list all those resources and everything?
Yeah,
email
the names of the books, and musical meditation, and maybe I'll look around for some other kind of meditations.
With that, I was pretty good with the physical stuff, but with the light, that was a little hard. Tips for getting into that? Or
Hard to stay focused on that,
Not
to feel it.
just even vision what we're trying to get at.
So, the easiest visualizations could be, you're just lying on the beach and you visualize the sun, the warmth of the sun hitting you. And if you do that a few times, some regularity, after a while you start really feeling the heat pretty well. But it's repetition that's doing it. And if we can't open up our hearts, then maybe we can meditate on that. Why am I blocked? Right? Is there something that can cut through? Other parts of my heart is doing hard to. But if we do it in a meditative state, relaxing the body, turning down the lights, we're much more open to be able to get in. Yes.
I
It's hard. One of my rabbis who was from a Hasidic background said there's nothing wrong with a l'chaim to get a little joyful, lift our spirits up. Judaism believes in things in moderation. We're not Muslims. We believe we can drink, and Friday night we make kiddush on wine because it has the alcohol in it. So that is practiced in Judaism, and a lot of people have a custom to make a l'chaim at dinner, and but only one or two of those. So I can only talk about the Jewish prescription for using l'chaims, spirits, to open up our spirit, cool our spirit. The others I can't say because Judaism doesn't have a tradition of that. I don't know if there's sources that speak directly about it. In the 60s, there were rabbis who addressed it, and they basically kind of said that using mind-altering substances alters your mind. And when we're trying to connect to God, we're trying to be in reality. So, reality as the hot mode is like reality. So, I want to be real with myself, with the world. So, does that allow that?
I feel like it's a demographic person.
Okay. So that's what they questioned. They felt like maybe it doesn't. Plus, at the time, it was illegal, which I guess New York State technically it still is. So.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, I think it's just go here now.
I saw that bouncing around the internet.
So.
I don't know what drying agents they use on it would make it not, but
Yeah.
for medical purposes, I guess it's a serious question. Right? So they could find it legally for medical purposes. So I can't answer that question fully, but just to say that Judaism does at times prescribe l'chaims and drinks to be able to help us open up a little bit, or in Purim open up a lot. So that's what it is. Of course, the problem is if I drink more than one on Friday night, then I'm just getting tired. Shabbat already in this relaxed mode. If I drink, it just like. So I hope this has, yeah.
You alluded to some of these practices having faded away or been lost, if you were to use. Is that really the case? And also, why aren't these practices more mainstream today?
So on some level, they were never mainstream. I mean, there are Kabbalistic practices. We're talking about the Kabbalistic ones which were lost. Those were very technical. The prayer book, which usually takes me, if you go to a fast synagogue in the morning service, it can take as little as 30 minutes. I like to not go to one which doesn't take less than 40 minutes. If you go to some of the real slow ones, they'll take 50 minutes. Okay? So, Kabbalistic prayer took at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. They had all these deeper inner, they're called Kabbanot, the Ari. Rabbi Isaac Luria there's a whole prayer book where you reconfigure the letters in the name of God and other letters. Look at these, think about them, and bring them into your mind. They're very technical. They require great ability to have great focus and concentration. And if you're not refined already, they can make you spiritually and emotionally unstable. Said one of the rabbis who entered the orchard went crazy. So I think that they were originally only intended for people who were on a kind of very spiritual, disciplined path. The Kabbalistic ones, that's what I'd say. There is a Rabbi Wolfson in Brooklyn, have you heard of him, Josh? And he's supposed to have some of those traditions, perhaps, Jewish meditation. But what I'd say, though, that's the more Kabbalistic technical meditations, which Rabbi Ari Kaplan his meditation and Kabbalah translated a lot of them. You see, they're very technical. Putting letters together, words together, names of God together, There's lots of sources on them, so that would seem to indicate they were practicing them, but we lost them. But the other ones, the idea, it says the rabbis used to wait for an hour before prayer. I mean, in the Code of Jewish Law, it says you shouldn't go into prayer in a state of rushedness, in a state of sadness, but you should settle yourself and get yourself to a place of openness and joy and, kind of like settledness before you pray. So they're really advocating that every time you pray, you really, that's just the first level of basic prayer, as we said. It's just kind of like being settled, being focused, being internally. So those practices, I think, are there, are the people who try and live their religiosity in a more deeper way, I think, practice those practices. This book, Jewish Spiritual Practices, he doesn't have a lot of exotic kind of mind things that he's doing. It's just kind of like, before you do this mitzvah, think about, you wake up in the morning, there's a blessing, there's a prayer we say, we thank God who has returned my soul to me. So just be thinking about that, I have a soul. And that God's good, God has just kept me alive. Today I was biking home, I biked to work, and someone was bothering me and waiting on me, and I just said, you know what, I'm healthy, thank God, family healthy, my kids are healthy. What do I have to worry about? That's a meditation, right? So I hope this has opened up some of this idea that we just said, turn inward, and just think about spiritual things. What is gratitude for the blessings we have, whether it's opening up our hearts, whether it's whatever it is. Our love for the people who are close to us. Whatever it is, it's just stopping, taking time, turning it inside, and sitting on that idea or feeling, and allowing it to come out within us. And then using that to connect, as I said earlier, to that which is greater than us. And look, synagogue should be that experience. That's what it's meant to be, amongst other things, with the additional dialogue with the Almighty. But if we don't have those elements, it's very hard to dialogue with God if we're not settled and opened up and thinking about things in a somewhat deeper way. And we run about our lives, and we spoke about this on Shavuot night. We don't even wait for the elevator anymore without checking our emails, always being busy, always having stimuli. And there's a lot to be said by just stopping and being. But it doesn't have to be being by emptying our head. It can be being by thinking about something meaningful, connected. Okay. Joshua, what is coming up at MJE?
What is coming up? That's a good question.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday is going to be a big opening for, we are relocating for the summer to an excellent location. It's at Sofra Synagogue, which is on 63rd and
11 East.
11 East, 63rd Avenue. 63rd Street.
There's not even a 63rd Avenue.
There's not even close to that. It's called Sofra Synagogue. It's a beautiful venue, beautiful location. We're going to be having some music being played. We're going to have some sushi as usual. There's going to be a talk next week as well. And there will be Hebrew that starts Hebrew at 6:45.
We're starting a series on personal growth, and next week we're going to talk about habits. Why is it so?
And you can't get a better location for that. We're outside. We're like under it's very nice.
Garden.
So we're gonna be there for the rest of the summer, for the next 3 months. May 31st is the Israel Day Parade. Mike said he was really excited about that. So that's the people who want to walk with MJE. We get shirts. We have a big crowd. Cheer, sing, dance, whatever you want to do. And then